That's why the committee is refusing to answer basic questions about January 6th. In fact, blocking these questions from even being asked. Before the sham investigation even started, Speaker Pelosi blocked me and Jim Jordan from investigating January 6th. She discredited the sham committee before it even started. So you have to ask the question, why would she do that? Because it isn't only a partisan witch hunt. It's an attempt that we now know, based on reports over the weekend, that the committee is being used to advance the radical Democrat agenda that includes abolishing the Electoral College. But it's also a cover-up. Speaker Pelosi blocked us because she's afraid of what a real investigation would uncover. She doesn't want Americans to find out what really happened on January 6th and leading up to it. And she doesn't want anyone asking questions about her role and her responsibilities in securing the United States Capitol. That's why the committee is refusing to answer basic questions about January 6th. In fact, blocking these questions from even being asked. Questions that must be answered to keep the Capitol safe and to prevent another riot or incident like January 6th from ever happening again in the future. What questions am I talking about? First of all, Capitol police officers we now know were half-staffed on January 6th because of. How is that? 2, why were our Capitol police officers under-equipped? Why were some officers forced to face down a riot with either expired helmets or no helmets at all? 3, why was the United States Capitol Police never trained to deal with riots after all of the riots that were going on in the summer of 2020? 4, did Speaker Pelosi communicate with the House Sergeant-at-Arms on January 6th or in the days leading up to the riot? 5, was Speaker Pelosi involved in the decision to delay the National Guard assistance on January 6th? 6, why didn't the Capitol Police intelligence unit raise the alarm about potential violence when they had evidence and intelligence for weeks leading up to January 6th that something violent could happen at the Capitol that day? 7, why did the FBI deploy commandos to Quantico on January 3rd with shoot-to-kill authority but fail to send the U.S. Capitol Police a single threat assessment or intelligence bulletin? 8, why did the House Sergeant-at-Arms refuse to cooperate with the Senate Homeland Security's bipartisan January 6th investigation? Those are just some of the questions that Jim Jordan and I were prepared to ask if we were able to participate in this investigation and in these hearings. But Nancy Pelosi blocked us from the committee because she knows that those questions leave a trail of breadcrumbs right back to the Speaker's office. Today in my hometown in Columbia City, my constituents are paying $5.25 for a gallon of gas. There hasn't been a single committee hearing on Capitol Hill about rising gas prices, let alone one in prime time for all of the American people to see. But the American people are sick and tired of what they're getting out of this Pelosi and Democrat-led Congress. They're tired of the theatrics. They want their congressmen and women to focus on the issues that matter most to them, but instead this is what we're left up to. It's a shame, and I believe that it will backfire big time on these Democrats as we near the election.
China tariffs, Mr. President.
If you're going to ask me about what I spoke about, I'll try to.
Mr. President, why do you believe so many Americans believe that your administration is not doing enough to combat inflation? And do you believe that you and your administration bear some measure of responsibility for the inflation that we're seeing across the country?
First is we're in power. That's the first thing. And you justifiably right, we control all three branches of government. Well, we don't really. We have 50-50 in the Senate. You need 60 votes to get major things done. I've been pushing the things I've been proposing here. You've heard me speak to today since I got in office. And I need to get 60 votes to be able to even pass them, number one. Number two, I think that, they're not focused. All they're focused on, understandably, is the problem they're facing. They get a 5.5% raise, an average raise in their salaries, and yet inflation exceeds that. And they look around the world, and they know that a lot of it's extremely complicated. And so they're frustrated, and I don't blame them. I really don't blame them. There's a lot we have to do. But you know as well, I shouldn't say you, I think what I have to do is explain in simple, straightforward language what's going on. Like, the reason why 30% of the inflation last year is because automobiles cost more. Why did they cost more? They couldn't get the computer chips to make them. People were making a lot more money. They wanted to buy the automobiles. They couldn't buy them because the costs went up so high because there were so few of them. The same way this year. The same way this year, the reason why prices are up. They understand, but they don't. Look, most people, the vast majority of Americans are hoping that their government just takes care of their problem and they don't have to think about it in detail at the kitchen table or at the dinner table. And that's understandable no matter what their background. But right now, it's confusing. There's a war in Ukraine. And they're scratching their heads like, what the heck is Russia doing? Should we be helping? They think we should be helping the innocent Ukrainians. But what impact does that have? Do you think the average person, whether they have a PhD or they have any other job, sits and thinks, wow, there's thousands of tons of grain in elevators in Ukraine that can't get out. And Ukraine's one of the biggest producers of corn and wheat. I wonder whether that's the reason my prices are up.
Do you take any responsibility for the inflation in this country? Do you take any responsibility for your policies?
I think our policies help, not hurt. Think about what they say. The vast majority of the economists think that this is going to be a real tough problem to solve, but it's not because of spending. We brought down the deficit. The bottom line is, how much does America owe? How much in the hole are we going? We're reducing that. Without congressional approval. Some parts are being held up by Congress. But all of my plan is focused on lowering costs for the average family in America, to give them just a little bit of breathing room. Now, what's the congressional Republican plan? They don't want to solve inflation by lowering your costs. They want to solve it by raising your taxes and lowering your income. I happen to think it's a good thing when American families have a little more money in their pockets at the end of the month. But the Republicans in Congress don't seem to think so. Their plan has actually made working families, it's going to make working families poorer. You don't have to take my word for it. It's in writing. They've made their intentions perfectly clear. Senator Rick Scott of Wisconsin, a member of the Senate Republican leadership, laid it all out in a plan. It's the ultra-MAGA agenda. Their plan is to raise taxes on 75 million American families, over 95% of whom make less than $100,000 a year total income. The average tax increase would be about $1,500 per family. They've got it backwards, in my view. I proposed a minimum tax for billionaires. In recent years, the average billionaire has paid about 8% in federal taxes. Congressional Republicans have proposed increasing taxes on teachers and firefighters. 55% of the largest corporations paid net zero in federal taxes in 2020 on $40 million profits. That just isn't right. That's why I proposed a minimum tax for corporations. Their plan would also raise taxes on 82% of small business owners making less than $50,000 a year. But it would do nothing to help to hold big corporations and companies accountable. Think about it.